This week's episode of the Rural Woman Podcast is brought to you by the patrons of the Rural Woman Podcast. This amazing group of individuals contribute financially to the Rural Woman Podcast to ensure the stories of women in agriculture hit your earbuds each and every week. Want to join them in supporting the stories of women in agriculture while getting access to extended episodes, patron-only episodes, and other great perks? Head on over to wildrosefarmer.com to learn more about how you can become a patron through Patreon. Hi, I'm Caitlin Dubin, and this is the Rural Woman Podcast. I'm a first-generation farmer who married into agriculture. Born and raised in a city, I was so unfamiliar with where my food came from, but I was determined to figure it out. Through my journey into agriculture, I saw women who were strong but humble, often taking a back seat. To me, these women were leaders who deserved a seat at the table. I created the Rural Woman Podcast to share the voices of women in an industry whose stories often went untold. The rural entrepreneurs who live and breathe their work, full of grit and pride. We come here to share our stories, to be in community with each other, to be challenged and inspired, but most importantly, to be celebrated and to be heard. We may not all live, farm, ranch, or homestead the same, but we are all connected. We are rural women, and our stories are worthy of being told. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Rural Woman Podcast. Today you'll meet Alexandra Brochu. Alexandra is a farmer from the Peace Country of Northern Alberta. Together with her husband, Alexandra has been farming for over 26 years, growing wheat and canola while raising their family on the land. She's also been one of the driving forces behind the Northern Rural Chicks, a group dedicated to supporting and empowering women in agriculture through events, workshops, and community connection. In our conversation today, Alexandra shares how her role on the farm has evolved over the years, the importance of succession planning, and the ways rural women can come together to support one another in both farming and life. Without further ado, my friends, let's get to this week's episode with Alexandra. Alexandra, welcome to the Rural Woman Podcast. How are you today?
Hello, Caitlin. I'm well. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to dive into your story. For my listeners who are unfamiliar with you, tell us who you are, where you're from, and where you got your start in agriculture.
Okay, so my name is Alexandra Brochu. I am located in Northern Alberta, so more specific in the region of Jerville, Alberta. My husband and I have been farming together since pretty much we've been married, so the farming instinct comes from him. I grew up as a small town girl, but my parents were not farmers, so everything I've learned from farming came from him. So, and now the kids have grown up. Now it's time for mom to do something for herself. So myself and a few other ladies in our region have created the Northern Rural Chicks. And this committee is for us women here that are living in the North to have a voice, and especially in the ag sector, because we're still often forgotten. Resources are also very minimal for us for help. Either it's in regards to mental health or physical health or anything related to the farming industry for us women. So yeah, this is where I'm at now.
So exciting. And I'm so excited to dive into all of the different layers. First question, how long have you and your husband been married for?
So we've been married for 26 years.
26 years. That is a long time.
And we were together for 4 years before that. So we've been together for a while.
That's amazing. So you said you grew up small town. Did you grow up in the area that you currently are, or did you move more north?
No, actually, so from where we are now on our farm, I grew up about 15 minutes away.
Okay. So you were essentially used to rural living just not necessarily on the farm. For listeners, can you give us like the perspective of how rural you actually are? We were discussing this before we hit the record button.
So for people that are closer to the cities, so we are 8 hours from Calgary, 8 hours north of Calgary, 4.5 hours north of Edmonton. So we are up there, but there's some people even further up north than us.
Right. And I can remember the first time I made the road trip up to, Grand Prairie, I think I flew to, but other places I had been to, I went to Lac La Biche in the fall, and I drove from Lethbridge, and I remember just thinking, I don't know how long I've been driving for today. Like, this is a long ways up here. And when I looked on a map from where my house was to where I was up here, I was like, that was a long distance.
Yeah, that would have been a long drive as well, for sure. For sure.
Well, and I just, when I think of my experience of growing up in a mid-sized city, relatively, to moving to a farm that literally was only 20 minutes away from that mid-sized city, for me, that was pretty rural. And I just look at it from the folks who literally live hours and hours away from any major infrastructure. I have a lot of respect because that's a long ways away from all of the peoples. But at the same time, I always think like, that must be nice, kind of.
You know what, Caitlin? It is. Like we're fortunate enough to live in an area, in a community that is safe. Our kids, we don't have to worry so much about our kids going outside, playing outside in the backyard. The landscape that they have at the palm of their hands, to explore and everything like that. And we have our room, right? Like we have our distance. And don't get me wrong, it's nice to go to the cities, when we need things or for doctor's appointments and stuff like that. But it's sure nice when we come home just to have these wide open spaces, the good air, fresh air that we can breathe in. And so we're very, very fortunate, for sure.
So take me back to when you and your husband first got married and you were out on the farm. What did your role look like as a newlywed to a farmer?
Oh, so when we first got married, Caitlin, so both my husband and I also had full-time jobs. So my husband was a grain buyer at the time, it was Agricor United. So he was full-time working there as well as farming. We had cattle back then as well. And I was a full-time teacher assistant and a teacher. So it was very busy. It was crazy busy. And then my husband decided one day that he wanted to try this grain farming operation. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's what you want to do, let's give it a shot. So now we had the cattle, we had the full-time jobs, and a little bit of grain farming. And then we started having kids. So for a while, we had 3 children under the age of 3. And we were still working. And then the parental leave started to kick in as well. So thank God for that. And then we had to make a decision. We had to make a change because it was just too much. My husband was not seeing the kids as much as he wanted to. And then I was home alone with the kids quite a bit. And it was starting to be a lot. We made it work, but it was too much. So then the cattle went down the road. And then we just started expanding our grain farm from there. My husband and I started our grain farm by ourselves from the bottom up. And we're really proud of that. And now today the kids are involved on the farm. They're all young adults. They also have their own jobs off the farm. But the farm is their main focus. That's what they enjoy doing as well. So it's been a lot of hours, a lot of work, and a lot of compromises as well. But so far, it's been really worth it.
That's amazing. And I hope you just take a minute to realize how much you've done in relatively a short amount of time. You've had 26 harvest seasons, right, of doing this. And that's absolutely incredible to be able to build that as a team and as a family. Talk to us about what you are growing on your farm.
So we are grain farmers. So this spring season here, we're going to grow wheat and canola. And then that's pretty much what we're growing right now as on our farm and that's what fits now. And because of all the, the price of the inputs, the commodity prices and everything, like these last few years have been a little bit tough in that aspect to decide, what's good for our farm, what's good for our land. And so far it's been working for us.
Very good. So I think I know this answer, but irrigation in that neck of the woods, is there irrigation?
No, there isn't.
I remember it well when the pivots stopped on my way up that way. It's for us in southern Alberta, irrigation is a thing. It's very common. We have the infrastructure. If you want to expand on that, we can. But talk to us about the growing conditions that you are faced with every year.
So we're lucky in the sense where we have land around our farm that is, close by. And then we also have some land in the river valley. So, and it's not very far. It's only like a 10-minute drive. But even just having that on our farm for farming, the soil is different. The environment is a little bit different. The temperature is definitely different. So we've had to learn to accommodate all of this on the farm. And, the spring timing is very crucial. The seeding timing is very crucial, especially in the valley. When we get a rain, it's a bonus for sure. So yeah, there's been a lot of things that we've had to learn along the way, but we've been very lucky these last few years. The crops have been very good for us. No complaints for sure.
You can help support the stories of women in agriculture to be shared through the Rural Woman podcast on Patreon. What is Patreon? It's a membership-based platform that helps fund and support creators like me to create and produce content like this that you all love. New to the Rural Woman podcast Patreon is ad-free listening and patron-only bonus content and exclusive episodes. Learn more and join the patron gang today at patreon.com/The Rural Woman Podcast. Let's go back to, when your husband had decided that grain farming was going to be the thing that you were going to do. At that point, what was your involvement in the day-to-day operations of the farm besides raising the next generation of farmers and working off the farm to feed those farmers?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, it was very busy. So when he did decide to do that, I was behind him 100%. It's always been a dream of him to expand the farm. Either it would have been with the cattle or to try this grain operation. So when he said we're going for it, so then my role was a little bit limited at that time, just because I was still working off the farm. But once I got home, I was the meal provider, the person to give rides to the fields or to wherever he needed to go. And then I would say that I was probably a little bit of he tends to call me the financial advisor, but I don't like that term. I think it's a team effort. So probably more of a sounding board for him at that time, And my husband has been so supportive of me on the farm as well, and our daughter. Every big decision he's ever made on the farm, he has consulted me. Now we're consulting our children as well. So that was the only part I had back then. Now it's totally changed, but at that time, that's all that I could do for him on the farm.
And when you say that, all I want to say is that's the only thing? Like, that's a lot. That's a big part of it, right? And I get it. I am the same. I'm like, well, I only do this. And it's like, well, if you weren't there doing that, then it wouldn't have gotten done. And that time can't be given back to the folks who can do the other jobs, right?
Right.
I always just think that the people working behind the scenes are the most vital to really any operation. But when I think of agriculture, I think of, again, those stories that go often untold of what's happening behind the scenes to support the folks who are in the field at that time.
Right. And when I say that that's all that I could do at that time is because over the years, my role on the farm has changed also quite a bit.
So what do you get to do now on the farm?
Oh, geez. So now I get to drive the machinery. So this has been a big, big change for me. So I drive the combine, I do the swathing, I still do the meals, but now the crew is a little bit bigger. And then the financial aspect also. So the farm ledgers, the bills, all that stuff. And then, yeah, just making sure everybody is okay on the farm.
I'm curious, do you remember what the first like big piece of machinery you operated was?
So the first one would have been the combine.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
started with the combine. Like that's the big one.
I did. It is the biggest, it is a big one, but I have to say it's easier to drive than a swather, hands down.
1000%. 1000%. And I feel like if I am ever in a room of the husbands of the listeners to the Rural Woman podcast, they might get mad at me because I've often said, if you can drive a minivan, you can drive a combine because it's really, honestly, you might not be able to fix the combine if it breaks, but you can still drive it when it's working well. It seems big and it seems scary and it seems intimidating. It did for me.
Well, it sure does, no doubt.
Right. And if you have that one piece of equipment to get your one paycheck off per year, you have to take a little bit extra caution with it. But I've heard this time and time again that typically women operators of equipment are gentler on the equipment. So it usually goes a bit smoother. I myself, if I hear any noise that I'm not supposed to, I immediately stop and I phone and I'm like, I don't know what that was. And they were like, can you explain it to me? When did it do it? I'm like, no, just come look at it. 'Cause
Well, and it's true. I've heard that many times also, right? Like just because we're not 100% sure what that noise is or whatever else, and we don't want to be blamed for breaking anything, because
right.
then, oh boy.
Never hear the end of it. And usually I'm the one who has to go and get the part anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I hear ya. We do that too.
absolutely. Absolutely. Would you say that your role now on the farm is more aligned with where you wanted to be, do you think? Or has it been out of necessity that you've had to go into the field?
Well, probably a little bit of both. Necessity for sure, because when our kids were growing up, there was nobody else there with my husband, right? So, I mean, and I'm the kind of person who I really hate seeing him even just loading the grain trucks by himself, just in case. So, yes, it was necessity, but now it's more of like, okay, this is what I do now. Like, this is our business. So, and to have it to be successful, we can't just rely on him to do it all by himself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I would say it would be a little bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk more about the kids' involvement in the farm. I feel like in interviewing women and being immersed in this lifestyle myself, I can tell the kids who wanted to stay on the farm and this is in their blood versus the kids that are like, get me the heck out of here. Out of the 3 kids, were they all excited to stay on the farm, wanting to stay on the farm, or was it kind of I'll think about it and see how it goes?
So we're very lucky. My husband and I are very close to our children. So, and this is the lifestyle that they've always known. So, yeah, no, all 3 are very involved on the farm. Our oldest son, Bobby, he's starting to purchase his own land now, and he's hardcore farmer. There is no doubt about it. But he's also a full-time heavy-duty mechanic at our John Deere dealership. So he does that on the side. And then we have our other son, Derek, who's also a farmer. And he's also starting to rent land. And he's actually staying with us full time to work on the farm to help fix the machinery for the spring and the fall. And him and his girlfriend, Ashlyn, and their daughter, little Ren, actually live on the farm. So they're close. And then our daughter, Catherine, she helps us as much as she can when she's not busy at the vet clinic. She's a vet tech. So, yeah, so all 3 of our kids, they know what what we're doing, what our job is. And whenever they can, they're right beside us, giving us, like helping us out. And then, it's nice for even us to see them grow also as farmers and to be able to help them with that. Because, like, I'm sure it's the same thing for where you are, Caitlin, but up here, if a young adult wants to become a farmer and start by themselves, it's almost impossible. With the prices of everything now for farming, it's almost impossible. So if our kids want to do this type of work, and if they want to stay in the farming industry, and we're able to do that with them, and we're able to support them, then, I mean, why wouldn't we? Why would we not do that for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having essentially your parents almost be your mentors, I think is a super special thing. I know it's really common for, I want to say, a certain generation of farmers who really encourage their kids to leave the farm. And I think a lot of them maybe shot themselves in the foot, for lack of a better term, because of, now what? Like, now what do we do? And like you said, the price of farming is absolutely astronomical. So
Mhm.
for somebody who's just coming in that wants to start, well, how does one person do that? Or how does a group of people do that? And if, the sense of family farming or small farming is important to you versus selling to a big buyer somewhere, there's pros and cons to all of it. But to have the next generation of farmers want to be farmers, I think is a super special thing. And I think that's a kudos to you and your husband for making it accessible and making it be a place that your kids want to be.
Yeah, right. And like, we're so fortunate that they still want to be with us,
Right.
right? So, we also have to take that into consideration, how fortunate we are for that aspect. And Caitlin, don't get me wrong, like, when our children graduated high school, we told them that they had to go to post-secondary education just in case something would happen to
Right.
us or to the farm. We wanted something for them to fall back on. And nowadays you have to, because, I mean, even if the kids would have graduated grade 12, and then they would have said, okay, we're just coming to the farm, well, that doesn't work either financially. So by telling them that, go, and for them also, we owed it to them as, young adults, to go out there and explore what else is out there. So ultimately, it was their decision to come back. We were very happy that they did, but we also wanted them to go out there and see what else was available for them as well.
I'm curious to ask this and share as much as you feel comfortable sharing about transition planning for your family farm. It's such a hot topic that is talked about but not talked about in agriculture.
Mhm.
We talk about it on stages and at events, and there's people who this is their profession. But when it's your family and talking about your farm, it's a very personal discussion. Have you and your husband had these discussions of what is next for your chapters as well as your farm's succession plan?
So my husband and I have talked about it a little bit between us. It is a hard discussion to have with your kids as well. And especially right now where we are at as a family, where we thought, okay, we didn't know how much the children wanted to expand the farm. And now, like last year, we expanded quite a bit more. So we are not ready to retire. But still, we still have to make those plans of, eventually, yeah, and what's going to happen with the farm, who's going to take it over, who's going to get what and what portion of it. And those, it's hard. They're hard discussions for sure, because it's sensitive, and you don't want to leave anybody out of the discussion or of the decision making. And yet you still have to take a look at, well, really the next, like 10 years or whatever, which one of the children is actually going to be still here farming. So we've had a discussion, but it's still in the process. There's still, and like I said, since we're still expanding also, it's almost like a back burner discussion also a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that with me. I feel like I'm kind of nerdy when it comes to succession planning because I get to hear a lot of discussions on stages about it through my traveling and speaking and everything in the winter. And this is a statistic that I learned just recently. Only 12% of Canadian farmers have a written succession plan. Only 12%.
I
And I was
believe it. I
right?
believe it.
And I was like, it's so low. But, we have the conversations, between our spouses or our business partners and that kind of thing. And it's so personal. The only advice I have is to just not have these discussions on like Christmas Day or
For
around
sure.
the Thanksgiving dinner table, right?
For sure. And I think, Caitlin, I think also why, my opinion as to why it is so low, I think it has to do a little bit with our government also,
Hmm.
right? There's so many uncertainties right now, especially in these last few months here. So as a farmer, it's like this is a big decision to make. And we don't know we don't even know what the next 5 years are going to look like. So, it's nice, yes, to have this succession plan, but if you leave it to your kids, or if your kids stay involved on the farm, they have to be able to afford it, right? And they have to be able to sustain it. So when we have like the economy where it's going right now, it's even harder to make that decision.
Yep, absolutely. And farming in general, there are so many unknowns that we have absolutely no control over, from who's the next prime minister to what the weather's going to do next Tuesday, right? So,
Yeah, there's a lot. We don't need to go to Vegas, Caitlin, to
no,
gamble.
absolutely not. No, we just got to decide what we're seeding in and when.
That's right. That's right.
So I want to talk more about your work with expanding resources for rural women in your community. Tell me where it started for you for the Northern Rural Chicks.
So for me as a farm woman, I was just getting frustrated with the lack of resources for us. We're up in northern Alberta, but it doesn't mean we're not here and that we don't exist. So, the aspects of getting help, whether it's about, in regards to our mental health, our physical health, even something really as simple as gardening tips, like just things that we need every day, or that we will need and that we can't find. So to me, I was just getting really frustrated with that. And the fact that if we did want to attend a women's conference, if whether it's related to farming or anything else, and that we had to drive to the cities to get this. So I'm like, I told myself, I said, there has to be something that we can do. So 3 years ago, I rounded up some of my closest friends and I said, look, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Would you ladies want to join me? And it was hands down a yes, which was awesome because I was a little bit nervous about it because, everybody's busy with their own lives and doing their own thing. So when we started 3 years ago, it was right after COVID. And then we hosted our first Women's Day event. And it was amazing. It was simply amazing. The turnout that we had, the support that we had from the community, and more specifically, even from the farming community for sponsorship and donors, it was amazing. So then we took it out. We started 3 years ago and we haven't stopped yet. So it's been going really well.
That's amazing. I have such a special place in my heart for the folks who raise their hand and say, there's something missing and nobody else is doing anything about it, so I have to do something. So I always feel akin to the folks who do that, right? Because, I always think like if I'm thinking this, then maybe there's somebody else thinking this too. And to have that group of women join you and say, yeah, let's do this. Talk to me about the community reaction to what you've been able to bring to your local community.
Oh boy. So, we have the feedback that we receive from the community, from the women, has been amazing. Like, and we've heard the thank yous, and we've heard that, whatever events you ladies are putting on, we're coming and stuff. So, so for an example, at our first Women's Day event 3 years ago, we welcomed Dr. Jody Carrington as a guest speaker. And she was amazing, of course. And then, but after the presentation, I was talking with the lady that was there. And then Dr. Carrington came up to us just to say hi and stuff. And the lady in attendance told Mrs. Carrington, you're the reason why I'm still here today. She had a really rough last year, and she was having issues with her mental health. And, to have someone in attendance at your event and say, you ladies put this on. Dr. Carrington was there. Oh, it was just amazing. To me, that was the point where we are doing something right, you know. And I mean, to have guest speakers to come out, even in our region, is tough, is really hard, just because we're so far. And I totally understand. And then, so, to be able to provide that to our community, I was so happy about it. I was very thrilled. And the ladies on my committee were as well. So, when you have things like that and you hear the feedback, then it's even more validation that we are doing something right.
Right.
And that it's needed.
Absolutely. And those are the moments that will stick with you forever, right? I myself have been on stages in rooms with hundreds and hundreds of people, and I've also been in the community gym helping make the potato salad a few hours before I go and speak. And regardless of how many people are there or what, the impact is still there. And if anyone listening right now has ever questioned if they should go to a women's event, there's something special that happens in a room full of women.
It does. And you know what? I think, people that we reach out to and that we ask them to come out and to do a presentation or to come speak to these women, honestly, if they could even understand the scope of what even just, being there in attendance has on all these people, and it's not like we're asking our guest speakers to come out and donate piles of money or to do things like so extravagant. We're just asking them to come out, come have a discussion with them. And it's amazing how it changes a life. Something so really simple. And right, so oh yeah, it's so worth it. So worth it.
Right? We're preaching to the choir here of, the value of having in-person events. And obviously during COVID times and things, it wasn't possible. I think, being able to have online events or podcasts or whatever it is to share stories, I think at the end of the day, as long as there's that community connection that we can feel, and especially for people who are in rural spaces that don't have access to the quote everyday things that other people have. And you had mentioned things like help for mental health or even, physical health for women. One thing that, has not been talked about a lot is postpartum depression in rural spaces. And there's studies saying that, the occurrences of postpartum depression is whatever percentage higher than in urban areas. And to me, it's like, well, of course it is. You don't have the supports. You don't have the people around you. And it's absolutely, and I always think it's 2025, like where is everything at? Again, I'm privileged to say that as I live 20 minutes away from a major area. But how would you say in the last 5 or so years, how have the supports been for your rural community?
So I think by having a committee like ours who reach out to like the Do More Ag Foundation or to different organizations that are really trying to cater to people in rural communities. So by being able to do that for our communities as well, I think is the right step. It's the step in the right direction. And also what is happening also in rural areas is that these subjects are still a little bit taboo, unfortunately. So then as a committee, our job is to find ways to get all these people involved, or to come together at these events. And then, you have the general discussion, you open the floor a little bit, and then you bring the resources to them, and then they can choose on their own if they want to reach out to these professionals or even just to us, and we can guide them to the right people. So I think that's really important. And we're trying, but like I said, it's still a little bit taboo. It's getting better though. It's definitely getting better, but we still have some work to do in that department for sure.
Yep,
For sure.
absolutely. And it
Uh-huh.
sounds like you are the right women for the job.
Well, we're trying. We're trying.
Can you tell us about any upcoming events that you have?
So actually, in 2 weeks, we are hosting a farmher artisan market in our local community, and this one is in conjunction with our local ag trade show. So, and this trade show is one of the biggest trade show up here in the north. So to be part of that for the women in our region is amazing. We did it 2 years ago, and we had another amazing turnout. And so we're really trying to make it different from other markets. And what I mean by that is that we try to bring in vendors that are not only local, but everywhere is in the Peace Country, and that offer all kinds of different services, or, items that we necessarily don't find everywheres. So it makes it a little bit more exciting and more enticing for the women to come out, you drop off the man at the trade show and then come out to the market and spend the day with the ladies. So, and I mean, everybody's welcome to attend the market, of course. But yeah, so that's what we're planning right now and this is happening in 2 weeks. And then we're also already planning for our next women's event. And yeah, so things are just they keep rolling.
That's amazing. That's so good. If there's somebody listening who has found themselves in an area where they feel like there is a lack of resources or there's a lack of conferences or anything like that, what advice do you have to give them to start something like this?
So, first of all, if they do live in a rural community, just be grateful of where you are, because it is a privilege to live in rural Alberta as well. We're fortunate to live there. Of course, if there's a lack of resources, don't be afraid to reach out. There's a few of us organizations out there and people like yourself, Caitlin, that they can reach out to, and that we can guide them. We can guide them and support them. That's why we're here, and to not give up, not to give up. You take one day at a time, and the outcomes are amazing. So yeah, so not just don't give up, because there are people out there who are willing to help you.
Right. And sometimes you just have to ask the question, right? Just ask the question, hey, does anybody else want to plan a women's event around here?
Yes,
Or
for
is there
sure.
anybody that wants to get together for coffee every Tuesday so we can just chat? Like anything to create that connection, I think is super important. So,
For sure.
my last question for you, Alexandra, what is the most rewarding part about being a rural woman for you?
Oh boy. You know what? Just honestly, just seeing how our family has grown, right? And just to see, how happy our kids have been growing up in rural Alberta, the big wide open spaces, the opportunity to do something as a family every day, the farming. So no, that in itself, it's a blessing.
So good. All the good stuff. For the folks who would like to connect with you after the show and learn more about your offerings, where can they find you online?
So the Northern Rural Chicks are on Facebook. We do have a Facebook page, and we also have a website. And I'm also on Facebook if people prefer to contact me myself directly. But yeah, please feel free to do so.
Absolutely. And I will put that link in the show notes so people can find you and connect with you.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Alexandra, it's been a pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me, Caitlin.
Thanks for listening to the Rural Woman Podcast. The Rural Woman Podcast is more than just a podcast. We are a community. A huge thank you to the Rural Woman Podcast team, audio editor Max Hofer, and a special thanks to our Patreon executive producers, Sarah Riedner from Happiness by the Acre. To learn how you can become a Patreon executive producer or other ways to financially support the show, head on over to wildrosefarmer.com to learn more. Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to the podcast to get the latest episodes directly on your playlist. And if you are loving the show, please be sure to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other platform that accepts ratings and reviews. You can connect with us on social media at the Rural Woman Podcast and with me at Wild Rose Farmer. One of the best ways you can support the show is by sharing it. Send this episode to a friend or share on your social media. Let's strengthen and amplify the voices of women in agriculture together. Until next time, my friend, keep sharing your story. Did you know that you can get this same great episode of the Rural Woman Podcast ad-free? I get it. Listening to ads during a podcast isn't always my favorite either. But in order to keep the lights and coffee pot on here at the Rural Woman Podcast Studios, they are necessary. I am so grateful to each and every one of my sponsors, but if you yourself would like to skip the ads while supporting the show, consider joining me over on Patreon. Patrons of the Rural Woman Podcast get ad-free episodes starting at Tier 5 on their podcast player of choice each week, plus some other great benefits. Find out more by heading to the link in today's show notes to learn how you can become a patron through Patreon.